Welcome to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I am your host and co-founder, Aaron Breitman. It's been a while since I've done kind of a solo episode. I really focused on having a lot of different Rutgers coaches on with the spring season kicking off in the last couple of weeks. I had baseball head coach Steve Owens. I had both lacrosse head coaches, Brian Brecht and Melissa Lehman. I also squeezed in Coquise Washington, Rutgers women's basketball coach. So I haven't had as many episodes lately. There's a lot going on. But now that we're, hitting the stretch run of basketball and wrestling and a few other things, I have some things planned. Next week, we'll have Brad Wachtel, one of the leading bracketologists who does have personal ties to Rutgers. I've spoken to him the last few years. We'll have him on early next week. And then also having Nick Costco, who does play-by-play for Rutgers Wrestling, to preview the Big Ten wrestling championships that take place next weekend, not this coming weekend. So lots coming up then. But today, the morning after Rutgers had a very damaging loss to Michigan at home, I thought I would dive into some thoughts and a bit more analysis following my rapid reaction video last night. I'm on about 2.5 hours of sleep because I get up rather early for work, but going to push through here because I think there's some important things that need to be said. Obviously, last night was extremely disappointing. Rutgers getting off to the start that they did. They really looked ready when Caleb came in, and credit to him for playing last night. Peichel said after the game he hadn't practiced all week, obviously suffering those back spasms against Wisconsin on the weekend before. Was not, looking good per Peichel when I spoke to him this past Monday to play, but he was able to play. He came in, he hit a three, the rack exploded. They were up 13-3. I really thought the key to the game, just in terms of a general sense, was that Rutgers was unable to capitalize during that stretch where Michigan missed 10 shots in a row. They were really struggling, and a 13-3 lead could have been greater. Rutgers was unable to take advantage. They missed some shots on several possessions in a row as well. And I thought that was the opportunity to deliver the knockout blow. 20-3 versus 13-3 is a far different situation. And, there's reasons that Michigan obviously came back. I mentioned this in the reaction video, but I thought Doug McDaniel and Kobe Buffkin, two speedy, smaller guards, kind of been the Achilles heel for Rutgers defensively over the years, in recent years. Really did a lot of damage. They had a lot of big shots. They had energy. Their quickness. They were able to beat Rutgers off the dribble and create shots. Something that Rutgers sorely missed on the offensive end, which really was the issue. Defensively, Rutgers, wasn't their best game, but listen, they held Michigan 15 points below their season average in Big Ten play. They held them to 41% shooting. That was not why they lost. Offensively, it was statistically, from an offensive efficiency standpoint, it was their second worst performance of the season. Just a hair better than the Seton Hall loss, which both games they scored 45 and 46 points. Where if you just had a bad offensive night, you would have won both those games, and it's extremely frustrating. I've talked about what I think offensively, Rutgers can do better. I thought that when they did look and prioritize Cam Spencer for catch and shoot opportunities, it worked. Cam didn't make every shot, but he got good looks, and he did make some big shots. And I just think that needs to be more of a priority, even though it was prioritized more so last night and against Wisconsin. It's probably their best offensive weapon. I don't know if probably is even right. I think it is. And if Cam's going to take 15 shots a game and 10 plus are pretty good looks. I think he could live with that. And I think that was, he only got three 3-point attempts last night, one of three, excuse me. And, but he was taking more mid-range jumpers and he was making them. So I think that has to be prioritized more. And then, and I've had people send it to me, but I've mentioned this for a while now. I wrote an article probably a month ago after I forget which game it was. But when Paul Mulcahy prioritizes his shot and creating offense for himself, Rutgers is at its best. They're at its best. And, his issues offensively have kind of mirrored, I think, Rutgers as a whole, where last night you really saw they were very timid, looking for their shots. They really struggled from the foul line. And I think it affected their confidence. The first half, they were 3 of 12 from the foul line. And it looked like a struggle for in the second half. No one was attacking the rim. And they just settled for some contested shots. They didn't finish well at the rim. They were 5 of 18 on layups, obviously an issue. But I think that it definitely, to me, looks like a confidence issue. And I think it does, fairly or unfairly, it starts with the point guard. Mulcahy is a great distributor. He's a great facilitator. When he looks to shoot and he makes shots, he opens things up for the rest of the offense. And, he has not done that as much. He hasn't really even shot that poorly. He just hasn't really looked to be aggressive on the offensive end. And I think that has been definitely part of the issue offensively. I did want to, I've seen comments where people keep saying, the Mag injury, it can't be the reason for this decline. Rutgers is 1-4 now since Mag has missed, has been declared out for the season. And I did do some research data-wise that honestly does show a very impactful. Well, I'm not speaking very clearly right now. It shows a root cause for the difference in both 2-point offense and 2-point defense since he's been out the last 5 games. So through 23 games with Mag, Rutgers shot 48.8% from 2-point range. In the 5 games without him, they're down to 44%. In the 23 games with Mag, defensively, they held opponents to 43.8% from 2-point range, which is excellent. In the 5 games without him, opponents have shot 54.3% from 2-point range. I don't think that's a coincidence. Mag is their best interior defender. He is also led the team from 2-point range offensively at 55.8% shooting from inside the arc. Those statistics and the team defense and team offenses variances are directly related to his loss. And that doesn't even speak to, I think, the impact that he made on this team just in terms of, it's a cliche of, glue guy, but Mag really held things together in a way that I think is pretty obvious now. It's not just his interior defense and his finishing ability, his offensive rebounding, his ability to get back on in transition, his ability to get out in transition on offense. And I've said this, his edge, his toughness, his swagger, he brought it. And I think that, with him on the floor, he helped open things up for things offensively. I think that his help defense with Cliff inside was huge. His ability to defend multiple players, even on the perimeter, is sorely missed. And it's thrown off the bench balance. Andre Hyatt coming off the bench as the 6th man. Rutgers was a stronger team. Him starting now, he's relatively played pretty well. Last night he did not. But overall, I think he's made the most of the opportunity overall. He's he's played smart. I thought he was the player of the game in the Wisconsin win, which, by the way, let's not forget, that was just a few days ago, and Rutgers showed a ton of heart and a ton of character with McConnell out, in addition to Mag, to be able to win that game. So I know there's the tendency, the human nature to have wild emotional swings, game to game. And, it's for those that have followed college basketball for years, that have followed this team, it's a long season. It's a marathon. Football is different. 12 games, every win or loss is more impactful because there's less games played. It's not, you don't need to understand advanced statistics to get that part of it. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just raised expectations, if it's just everyone being more emotionally invested, if it's people that do kind of consider themselves more football first fans, but that there's just wild reactions after losses. Now, last night, definitely at the top in terms of the panic, and I've said this recently, I've said it before, I've written about it, I've said it in my reaction videos. Criticism is 100% fair right now. Concern, for those that want to panic, go right ahead. For those that just, say that this team is done, that give up on this team, that say derogatory remarks, for those that booed this team last night, I don't agree. I don't get it. I think that's, just, I guess I was going to get to this in the end, and maybe I'll save a little bit, but I just think that as a fan base, we can be better than that. I think that the whole rush to judgment after every poor performance. Yes, it was extremely disappointing. I really didn't think it was an effort thing last night. I thought it was much more of an execution issue, specifically on offense. And it was a mentality issue in terms of not being willing to attack the rim. And I thought that it was also a little bit of bad timing with, Hyatt and also Derek Simpson. They both had off nights, and I think they're the two best. Cam Spencer, I'm okay, he can get downhill some. McConnell can as well. But I think that Hyatt and Simpson, when they get downhill, are, the best at getting to the rim. Hyatt's had his issues finishing. Simpson to a degree, but they both can get downhill and attack the rim in a way that I don't think anyone else in the team really can. And they both had off nights, and I think that was a big factor in Rutgers not being able to attack the rim. Obviously, credit to Michigan. I mean, defensively, they were excellent last night. A lot of Michigan people were saying it was the best defensive performance of the season. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson and Reed inside, two huge guys that impacted how Rutgers did finish at the rim. But, as a whole, they didn't go strong enough. They didn't finish. They didn't draw fouls, especially in the second half. They really shied away. They lost confidence. And I think that was, the Nebraska loss was, and it looked like, they were completely out of sync. They kind of unraveled with each other on the court. And, their effort was not what we have come to expect. I thought last night was different. Last night was more of a confidence issue. Last night was more of an execution issue. They played hard. They played relatively well defensively. They held Michigan 15 points below their average. They held them to 1 point per possession, which is, it's not it's not an elite defensive performance, but it's not a bad defensive performance at all. It was actually statistically a better defensive performance than they had against Wisconsin from an efficiency standpoint. So, it's concerning for sure. Rutgers, on moving in the wrong direction now, dropped from number 28 to number 37 in the net rankings as of this morning. They in KenPom went from 27 to 33. One thing to note, coming in to last night, there was a statistic where Rutgers was one of 15 teams to have at least 6 wins against teams projected to make the field, and to be at least 500 against teams projected to make the field. 1 of 15. They have some really good wins. The win at Purdue is the best win in the country. this season. I don't think that's can be really argued. The only team to be Purdue at Purdue. And then they also won at Northwestern, which is an extremely valuable road win. Northwestern did blow a big lead to Illinois last night. Um, they have a win over Indiana. They have some really good wins. Wisconsin counts as a quad one win. So they have 5 quad one wins. And now here we are going into Sunday, and at Penn State is a massive game, and it's a quad one road opportunity. And I really do think if they can win that game, that's going to really, I think winning that game and then winning on the road at Minnesota, and they're a lock to make the NCAA tournament. Another quad one road victory would be massive. They have 3 already. A 4th, I think, would do the trick. And I mean, I've seen some crazy things out there, message boards on Facebook, on Twitter, people saying they're going to make the NIT. I mean, listen, they're inching their way towards the bubble. They were projected as a 7 seed by most people going into yesterday's game. So they're going to be, projected probably as 8, 9, and 10 for the most part now before Sunday. Definitely inching their way towards the bubble. Need to get a win here before the end of the regular season. Minnesota, you have to win at Minnesota. It's a quad 4 game. You don't want that on your resume. That would be true panic time if they lost that game. But if you win at Penn State, that's a huge statement. Penn State's on the bubble. They're right on the edge, even closer to projection than Michigan. Penn State's an extremely scary team. 3-point shooting, especially at home, has been lights out. Rutgers did an amazing job on them at the rack. 20-point win in January. Rutgers pretty much never plays well at Happy Valley. They've won once. They had a 1-point loss a few years ago. But most of the time they play at Penn State, they get blown out. So I don't know. Maybe, Rutgers is this team better suited for the road right now. They lost back-to-back home games at the rack for the first time in 4 seasons since 2019. I get the frustration. I am very surprised in the reaction of the fans yesterday. It was, Rutgers played very tight. When Michigan came back and Rutgers started missing free throws, you could see the tension just, come out of them, and you could hear it in the crowd. You could hear the groans on missed free throws. By no means am I blaming the fans for the loss, but I am upset that the way they treated the team in the second half in terms of booing. And this whole thing about, they get on NIL now, and they're fair game. Well, they're not professional athletes. Nobody on Rutgers is getting some huge NIL deal. And I just don't think that, it's I think I don't know if lost perspective is the right way to phrase it. Because I think it's honestly, and I'm not trying to pick on fans, all fans are welcomed. I don't care if you've been a fan of this team for 5 games or 5 years or 50 years. I don't I don't like to be a fan snob. I hate when people say I'm the best fan ever of this team, or I'm the biggest fan. We're all fans of varying degrees. And whether you've been a fan for decades like myself, or if you're, in your 20s and a recent graduate or a current student, we are all equal. We are all Rutgers fans. We all deserve to celebrate wins and commiserate in losses. Yes, some of us have more experience than others in dealing with them. That helps with perspective. Or I actually think it also hurts because I do think there's a certain portion of fans that, tighten up as well, and even with success, I've seen it, they get nervous and they just stop projecting Rutgers and they say tournament, it's too early, or they're being ranked. I mean, they stop. you know, afraid of success. And then you have fans that, you know, woe is me and the world is crashing over every loss. And I mean, I saw someone write yesterday before the loss that, you know, it's a down year for Rutgers, so they should just go to the NIT. It's better for recruiting if they just go to the NIT and win a couple games because it's a down year for Rutgers. Crazy, crazy. I mean, do we not remember the 3 decades of never making the NCAA tournament? And now Rutgers is still, as of today, after the disappointing loss, in position to make the NCAA tournament for a third consecutive year, which would be program record, and really the fourth if you count the COVID year, which they were projected to make it. Steve Peichel, not a perfect coach. You know, I thought the substitution patterns last night were a little questionable. You know, I thought when they were up when they took Cliff and Paul out with 8 minutes into the game, Michigan made a run. You know, whenever Cliff was out of the game, Dickinson just dominated. And then I thought more so in the second half, 10 minutes to go, Paul converted a 3-point play. They were down 40-38. Paul came right out. Rutgers then, and hindsight's 2020, to be fair, Rutgers turned it over twice in a row and then got a block, had a shot blocked. And Michigan then started on their 18-5 run. Paul quickly came back in, but that moment evaporated pretty quickly, you know, where they just needed to tie the game or get over that hump, hit a 3, take the lead. I really think things could have turned. Their confidence needed it. And, you know, I think that to me is the most troubling part of this is Rutgers just looks shaken. They don't look confident right now. And, you know, I know people don't want to blame it on the loss of Mag. And I just think that you can't ever know or be able to quantify the impact of one person when they're lost, you know, to the chemistry of a team, to the you know, the connectiveness of a team, you know, and it's not all about statistics. And I think we're seeing that Mag really had a huge impact on this team. And you know, yes, it's not an excuse in the sense of they can't just fall apart. And, you know, they need to be more mentally tougher than that. They need to be able to adapt. They need to be able to find a way without him. That doesn't mean their ceiling is not impacted without him. But there are enough pieces on this team for it still to be a good team, even without Mag. You know, Cliff, Caleb, and Paul, Cam. I mean, that is a solid foursome. You know, Hyatt and Simpson are useful pieces. You know, Reber and Palmquist weren't able to do too much last night. Palmquist did hit a big 3. Reber was overmatched, especially on the defensive end, had some turnovers. You know, the bench is certainly weakened with Mag being out as well. But they need to find a way, you know, and I think what's interesting is defensively. I mean, Rutgers they're still number 3 nationally in defensive efficiency. They're still number 1 by a pretty big margin in Big Ten play in defensive efficiency. So the defense, while we mentioned the 2-point defense is certainly suffered, they haven't completely fallen apart on the defensive end. It's really offensively, you know, they're really struggling. And I do think, you know, prioritizing Cam more and more, running plays for him, running him off screens, you know, getting him catch and shoot opportunities has to be done more so. Paul looking to create offense more so. You know, obviously in transition, this seems pretty good. They need to continue to look for more. I think that was obviously a huge part of last night. I mean, only 3 points off of turnovers. They did have 11 points in transition, but only 3 points off of turnovers. Michigan had 17. That was a huge part of it. Missing layups. You know, they're getting looks at the basket. They're just missing. You know, these are not reinvent the wheel type concepts on offense. I don't think they're that far away. If you prioritize Cam more, if Paul can change his mentality, if the team can finish and go stronger at the rim, get back to the foul line more, finish closer to the rim. You know, these are not they don't feel like insurmountable obstacles. And I think it is somewhat tied to confidence and mentality. And that's on the coaching staff. They need to get this team reset mentally. Again, you have to credit this team for what they did against Wisconsin. The Nebraska loss, things unraveled. They were able to bounce back. And then, boom, the Michigan game. Michigan came in, desperate. It was a must-win situation for them, and they were the hungrier team last night. And now Rutgers needs to learn from that, and they need to be the hungrier team every time they step on the floor. I think part of this, to be honest, is, and I guess it's going to sound like a criticism, but I feel like it's more of a fact, is that I don't know if there's a true alpha on this team. And I think I really started thinking about it more last night, how much they missed the alphas of Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr. They were true alphas, and I think that they also were really, really good in handling and kind of absorbing criticism. I think they were able to shield the rest of the team in terms of criticism, in terms of, the fan unrest online, media criticism. Rutgers doesn't have that type of personality right now. Gio and Ron saw it all, and Caleb has too. And I think Caleb has been very stand-up, in talking to the media after losses. I think Paul did a good job last night. But I think that, listen, it can be unsettling, and increased expectations, increases criticism when things don't go well. And I think that Gio and Ron had those alpha personalities that they were able to shoulder the blame, absorb it, kind of protect the rest of the team, but also have the mentality and be able to sense moments where they needed to take control and be assertive. And, they weren't always successful, but no one is, but they were more successful than not. And they were able to, I think, create urgency when it was needed. I thought that they were to blame in some respects in the poor start to the season last year, but they were also to credit for the way that team responded, the way they, produced that historic 4-game win streak against ranked foes, the way they were able to finish year after year with their backs against the wall, get wins when they needed to get wins. And here we are now. Rutgers needs to get wins in the final weeks of the season to solidify their NCAA tournament resume. And they did it last weekend against Wisconsin. And now they have another chance against Penn State on Sunday night, at Minnesota next Thursday night, Northwestern at home on senior night, Sunday night, regular season finale. So 3 huge opportunities. If Rutgers wins 2 of those, they're a lock for the NCAA tournament. If they win 1, it's got to be Minnesota. You already have 2 quad 3 losses on your resume. You don't want a quad 4 on top of that. Yes, the quad 1 win. I don't know. It's tough. We'll ask Brad Wachtel on Monday when I have him on Monday, Tuesday of next week after the Penn State game, what he thinks about that. But, listen, more importantly, this team just has to reset. They have to reset their mindset. They have to reset their identity. They can't be the same thing they were before Mag because he's not coming back. And, I think, listen, between Andre Hyatt, Derek Simpson, Cam Spencer, Paul Mulcahy, I think all of them, they're all useful parts. They're all productive players at times. They can be. There needs to be kind of what am I trying to say here? It's not like a puzzle, but it's almost like a relink of how everyone's best utilized. And, that includes Cliff and Caleb. And this team can play, I think, a little bit differently and could be a lot more effective offensively. They're not going to shoot 40% from three ever. But, this team is capable to shoot over 70% from the foul line. They can shoot better inside. They've proven they can share the basketball. I thought last night the ball stuck too much. It wasn't as much ISO, but it was more like, being focused on getting it to one guy and not really just letting it develop. They never really try to create natural flow within the offense. And I think it really hurt them. So I think just a mentality, a philosophy, reshifting. I think that I think the parts are there that this team can be more productive offensively, and they can be they can perform better. And I just think that the doom and gloom. I do get it to some degree, but I think you have to be able to step back also. And listen, after the season is when we look at the big pictures and we examine the deficiencies and where this team really missed, and where they were successful, and where the program is as a whole, big picture wise, long term wise. But I just think that the way this team finished the last three seasons, and what we've seen from this team at times this season, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Yes, be concerned, be critical, completely fair. To give up and also not understand that college basketball, game to game, yeah, it's going to be it's going to change game to game. I mean, you can't just say because they played terrible. I mean, the season was over after Nebraska, and then they go to Wisconsin, they win. So why would it be any different moving forward? And listen, I was always of these last few games, I was always most worried about the at Penn State game, because I think because of their 3-point shooting ability and the fact that Rutgers never really plays well there, I always had that circled as like, probably the toughest game left on the schedule. But would I be shocked if Rutgers went into Penn State and won that game? No. Do I expect them to? Honestly, no, I don't. And then that's just going to add to the panic and add to the snowballing of them rolling closer to the wrong side of the bubble. I just think, in closing, we have to do a better job as a fan base. We got to keep it together. I mean, come on. At this point, we've been there before. I know for years and years and years, we never experienced what the bubble was like. We were never in contention to be able to understand the emotions of it all. But we have now for a few years. And I mean, if you just compare to last season, Rutgers is so much in a better position, metrics wise. And, the bubble this year is very soft. It's very soft. So yes, could Rutgers implode and lose every game out? Of course. You can never say never. But is that going to happen? I think it's unlikely. I do. I think it's unlikely. I think, the most important thing is about getting their confidence back, getting their identity back, getting their mindset in the right place. Having the leaders of this team, the veterans of this team kind of get mentally clear and on the same page, focused. This team, they need that toughness. They need that toughness. And there's no denying that they're not the same team with Mawot Mag, but that does not mean this cannot be a good team moving forward. And I think they showed on Saturday that they have the intestinal fortitude to be able to win games, and to pull things out. And I thought last night defensively that it wasn't their best effort, but it was nowhere near their worst. I mean, it was a good defensive effort overall. You held Michigan at 58 points. You need to win that game with your offense. And we don't need them to score 70 points a game, but they got to score in the 60s. They need to. And I don't think that there's that many things that need to be done. They need to get to the line more and make their free throws. They need to finish more layups. And then they need to get shot opportunities for Cam and Paul. I don't think it's that complicated. I know it's easier said than done. But I guess my point in saying it's not complicated is I think that there's hope. I think there's hope that they can figure that out. Again, they're not going to be an explosive offense, but I do think that they can be better than they've been for sure. And I just sorry for being an eternal optimist. I know some people get upset. I think that some people just are begging me to just explode and just rip this team, and it's just not going to happen because I don't feel that way. I get the ups and downs of the season. These they're people. I mean, the players. You think they want to be going through this? Of course not. The coaching staff doesn't want to be going through this. I think that they all have to search for answers. I think whenever they've had their backs against the wall in the past, they've pretty much always come through. And I think that if you look back to the beginning of the season, they were picked eighth in the Big Ten. They were fringe NCAA tournament team. A lot of people expect them to go to the NIT without Ron and Gio, and they're kind of on that border right now. So I don't think you call the season a disappointment. Yes, you want to say they got off to a great start, and they were 8-4 in Big Ten play. But listen, a very clear thing happened in Mag getting hurt, and it's not an excuse. It's a fact, and yes, they need to be able to figure it out without him. If you just lose out and implode, that's a failure on the coaching staff and a failure on this team. But I think that they can recover and they can get better from this. Their ceiling, yeah, I think their ceiling is not as high with Mag, but I still think they can be a good team without him. And they just have to figure it out. And then, unfortunately, it's taking time. Unfortunately, they had 2 disappointing home losses here in a row. And all I could say is I'm sticking with them. And I'm really intrigued to see what can happen moving forward. And I hope this, it served a little bit of a therapy session for me. I hope it served for you too. Reach out to me on Twitter, email. I'll do a Q&A email podcast soon. Like I said, we're going to have Brad Wachtel for Facts and Brax, one of the most accurate bracketologists out there. Next week, we'll also have Nick Costco here to preview Rutgers wrestling at the Big Ten Championships. And we'll have plenty of coverage at the Scarlet Faithful. Really appreciate you listening today. And, all I can say is we just have to, keep grinding as a fan base. We need to be better, honestly. Like, let's just, if they fall apart and they miss the NCAA tournament, we can commiserate as a fan base and just, lament the failure of the end of the season when it happens. Don't try to, you can't react ahead before it's even happened, and if you want to project that it's going to happen, fine. If that's what you need to do to feel better, fine. If that's a self-coping mechanism, if that's a pain avoidance mechanism, go for it. But from my perspective, there's a lot of season left. This is not over. This team is not in a bad position. They are still firmly in the NCAA tournament field. They have to get off the mat, and I believe they will. Thank you for listening to the Scarlet Faithful podcast.